Welcome to the God's Not Dead Show with Mike Huckabee.
Joining me now is Brad Dacus. He's the president of the Pacific Justice Institute. And I'm going to talk with Brad about some of the cases that indeed reflect the message that you're going to see in God's Not Dead 2. Brad, great to have you here. So Brad, tell us a little bit about Pacific Justice Institute. What do you do?
Well, we at Pacific Justice Institute are a nonprofit legal defense organization, and we're committed to defending religious freedom, people's basic rights to practice their faith, live their faith, proclaim their faith. And we're really sort of unique in that we don't just take on the high-profile cases. We don't cherry pick. We work hard to make sure that no one is left on the side of the road, that everyone whose rights are being violated get the protection that they need.
I mean, most people think, well, that's not happening that much in America, so what's the big deal? Why do you even guys need to exist? Because, I mean, is there really that much of an assault on religious liberty in this country?
Religious freedom is being oppressed and persecuted today more than any time in our nation's history. It's only but by the grace of God that we haven't seen more oppression of people of faith than we've already seen. But there are so many examples across the country, particularly on the West Coast, which I believe is the epicenter of religious persecution for the United States.
Some people are going to cynically look at this film and say, but that's not really happening anywhere. So tell us about some of the cases that you guys are dealing with that would validate that this is not that uncommon.
There are so many examples of religious persecution in the United States, things that we wouldn't even have imagined just a few years ago. For example, in a shopping mall, a shopping mall used by people in the public in the city of Sacramento, there's a gentleman who was sharing his faith. He was talking to someone else in the open area where they're eating. No problem, right? Wrong. He's handcuffed, arrested, treated like a criminal. Why? Because the mall had a policy that said, you're not allowed to share your faith at any time with someone that you meet for the first time in the shopping mall. And get this, you're also not allowed to have anything religious on your clothing, like the word God or Jesus.
How can they even enforce such a thing that would dictate what kind of clothing you wear if it's not clothing that is obscene or that is patently offensive? How can they even get there?
Right. Well, that's the problem. Our society today has this twisted mentality that somehow religion is something that has to be kept private, and if it's displayed or mentioned, it's somehow offensive and inappropriate, which is totally contrary to our nation's history and our founding fathers and how they practiced and lived their faith. So this gentleman, though, the key thing, he stood up for his rights. We represented him. We lost at the lower court, but we won on appeal. And because of that, people are now liberated throughout shopping malls in California to be able to share their faith and live their faith and not have to be ashamed of it.
Brad, talk about another case that you're having to deal with that would remind people that religious liberty really is under assault.
We're seeing religious freedom under assault statutorily. Specifically, there's a new law in California where they dictate that pro-life Christian pregnancy clinics, nonprofit pregnancy clinics, reaching out to women where they are, that they have to advertise where women can get an abortion for low cost or free, and they have a big phone number where they should call. And in order for them to do business in California, to volunteer and help, they have to advertise something that goes totally against who they are and what they believe. Make no mistake, if we're not successful in challenging this in the end, then there'll be a total blank check for government to be able to dictate to any church, any synagogue, or any religious institution what they have to say or what they can't say. The First Amendment is not the First Amendment if religious institutions and people of faith can only express themselves if the government approves of it.
How big of a problem is it that sometimes Christians just don't want to take the stand? They don't want to fight. They don't want the public humiliation. They don't want the attention, the notoriety.
Right.
Because, I mean, let's face it, this is not easy for a person, whether it's a Grace Wesley at the school or whether
Right.
it's one of your clients out on the West Coast. They don't really want to be written up in the newspaper and have people throw things at their home.
Yes.
So what is the key to getting people to say, I'll take a stand?
I think the key is for them to realize that if they don't take a stand, then the oppression is not only going to continue, it's going to get worse, a lot worse. And that is why I think it's so important that when the bell tolls, that we as Americans step up, are willing to be counted, and make claim to our First Amendment rights and never take our rights for granted. You know, Rosa Parks, she wasn't a big person, she wasn't a vocal person, but she's a person who knew who she was in the eyes of God, a person who knew her constitutional rights, at least the way it was intended to be applied. And she laid claim to those rights. And because she did, a revolution took place of civil liberties and civil rights for people irrespective of their skin color. In the same way, we need to stand up for our religious freedom. And by doing so, we can create the same kind of revolution that will ensure that our freedoms to practice our faith and live our faith are protected for us and for generations to come. The stakes are high. If we're not successful and we lose religious freedom, make no mistake, we will lose our other freedoms and our nation as well. That's how important it is.
When people go and see the film, God's Not Dead 2, they're going to, I think, be mesmerized by the story. It's brilliantly written.
Yes.
The acting is terrific, and I'm excited about people seeing it. But I hope people don't say, wow, that was a great movie, and I really enjoyed it. It was great entertainment. It's a good thing that isn't happening anywhere. And I think the point that you're trying to make is, this isn't something that might happen. This is not a predictive film of what will one day take place in America out there in the next generation. It's happening right now.
It's happening right now. And when we have home Bible studies shut down in San Juan Capistrano or in Florida, and we have people oppressed because of their faith in the workplace or in the public square, arrested for sharing their faith, this isn't isolated. It's all across the country, and it's particularly strong on the West Coast. We need to all work collectively, hand in hand, with the same common resolve, and that is this: religious freedom must survive, because if it doesn't, this nation as we know it and the freedoms that we have will not survive either.
I'm glad Pacific Justice Institute is out there fighting the fight. Brad, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.